I'm Ray Nicano. I've been the tech lead for all of the ClimateFast webcasts that have been taking place since the pandemic started. So we've done about 7, 8, 9 webcasts. Actually, I have a graphic on that, so I can show it to you later. But basically what I've done, every time we do a webcast, we learn something more. So it's just basically taking all of those learnings. And of course, the last webcast we did is probably the one that's best understood what we're doing, what we should be doing. And so that's just how it works. So this is really a culmination of all of that work. And I should introduce a couple of the people on my tech team, Mark Chaplin and Faria. Elena's kind of a sub-member right now. But I don't see Sharon's not here and Eileen's not here, when I can tell. I've actually increased the number of people you can see on the screen to 49, which I think is the maximum. So hopefully we can see everybody if they do show up. What else? I think I mentioned that, yeah, this session's being recorded. See the questions to the end. Okay, let's get going. So most of this is going to be on a share screen. So I'm going to start with that. Oh, I know. I forgot to ask. Did that too soon.
Hey,
Sorry?
Can I ask a question right off the bat?
You were trying to see the questions at the end, but go ahead.
So you're recording this?
Yes.
But I see live on custom live streaming at the top.
Right.
But I don't see where it says that it's being recorded by Zoom. Is it being recorded by Zoom as well?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I could do that.
Okay, so this is being recorded in YouTube.
This is being recorded in YouTube, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because ClimateFast has a YouTube channel, and it's just easier to collect and distribute through that comment channel.
Oh, okay.
What I was going to ask you, yes, how many people here are familiar with Zoom? How many are comfortable with using it? Okay. How many people are familiar with YouTube? Okay. Oh, okay. So that's about 50%. All right. Okay, so let's get started. Okay. So this is the document that you have. And basically, the approach that ClimateFast has been taken is to have the live Zoom session with your, I call them speakers, presenters, panelists, and that is actually live streamed to YouTube. And as I mentioned before, ClimateFast has a YouTube channel, so we just find it easier to do it that way. They also have a Facebook presence, but we've been using YouTube, and I think our team is very comfortable with that. So I think the one thing that we always do is use an Eventbrite process. And the reason we do that is so that we can collect the email IDs of the people who are registering and continue to build up our mailing list. So what we'll do is we'll send that actual YouTube live stream link to the people that have registered, usually the day before, the day of, and probably an hour before the event actually starts. So, one of the things that we do is to collect the links, contact information, anything else that the speakers and presenters, panelists want to pass to the audience. And we do that through a role that we call the YouTube chat moderator. And that person, at the appropriate time during the session, copy those links, contact information into the YouTube chat. The other side of it is that if we are asking for questions from the audience, we'll do that through the YouTube chat as well. And the questions will come in, our YouTube chat moderator will put that into a shared Google Doc, which is accessed by the MC or by the panel moderator. And that's how that back and forth happens between the audience and the speaker, panelist, presenter. I guess the other reason for taking this approach too You may have heard of Zoom bombing. So having the audience out in the YouTube universe actually prevents that from happening. So I suppose they could still send nasty comments through the YouTube chat, and our moderator has to deal with that. So the other thing that we done lately is to produce a survey using SurveyMonkey. And ideally, you want to have that survey ready to go out during the actual webcast, so that everyone that is on the YouTube live stream will receive that chat, that SurveyMonkey survey link, and they can respond to it. Because not necessarily anyone that's registered through Eventbrite is actually on the live stream. So
you put the SurveyMonkey link in the chat?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I can see you. Okay. Sorry, put this over. Okay. Okay, so I think I've covered everything in the assumptions portion. So roles within the Webcast project. So I have what we call a program sponsor. This would be the person that's come up with the idea behind the webcast. What is it you want to accomplish? They're the person that's basically going to pull together the program. They will look after getting the speakers, presenters. If it's going to be a panel, they'll arrange for the panelists. They'll approach their potential panelists. They'll look after the publicity, marketing, advertising, leaflets, posters, whatever that might involve. Right? Then there's a project manager. And in most of the ClimateFast webcasts, I've been basically the project manager. So I take on multiple roles. There's a role of project librarian, which I'll describe later. There's some looking after YouTube, looking after Zoom, looking at the SurveyMonkey if we've decided to take that on. I have noted here that the program sponsor could be looking after that. But generally, the program sponsor looks after Eventbrite. So that whole registration process. So prior to publishing of the webcast by Eventbrite, and to me, that's kind of the a trigger point. Because when you finally lined up all your speakers, presenters, and panelists, and they've committed to a date and time, then that's when you can send out your advertising, you can send out your Eventbrite registration, because that's when you can start getting people to sign up for your event, your webcast. So I've just noticed some of the things that are needed to do that, and some of the other responsibilities that the program sponsor has. But as I mentioned, the outreach for both the speakers, presenters, and panelists, the outreach to the potential audience that you're trying to get to. And you'll notice here that I make a note of the graphics advertising the event. So things like, as I mentioned, posters, leaflets, what I call a web graphic card. Also, there's a web banner. So it's a narrow banner that you can put into a website banner page. Publicity release I've mentioned. And when you do your distribution, you have your own mailing lists, which you keep adding to from your Eventbrite events, right? There's climatechallenge.ca, they have a calendar. TCAN does. Climate has a public calendar. So just making sure you get the word out as much as possible. I talked about the project manager role. And the project manager, as I already mentioned, takes on multiple roles. And I guess in my case, I've been taking a lot of these other responsibilities. So project librarian. So one of the first things you want to do is create a folder to contain all documents pertinent to your webcast. So this might be, in our case, we have a webcast proposal. So that would go into this folder. Contact sheet. Contact sheet will contain all the email IDs and phone numbers of all the people involved in your webcast, especially for your speakers, presenters, and panelists. Because if for some reason, when you have your actual webcast event and they're not there, they haven't signed in, you need to call them, and you need to call them pretty quickly. The folder also contains the webcast program master schedule, which I'll describe in more detail in a minute. We have something called a Zoom speaker checklist. And that's what contains some basic things that we expect of our speakers. Things like being able to turn the audio on and off, the video on and off, that they have their full name as their Zoom name, that they have a light as opposed to behind them, and it's happened. So there's also something that I've just created. I'm not sure if I have it in the folder that I'm going to be showing you, but it's called a key elements document. And that contains the YouTube links for both your rehearsal and event, and your Zoom links for your rehearsal and event. And it's just handy to have because people just ask you, what's that Zoom link? What's that YouTube link, right? The thing to be careful about is the Zoom event link, because if that gets carelessly distributed, like if it goes open to the public, then you leave yourself open for what we call Zoom bombing, right? And you'll have people come in, you don't know who they are, and they get into your live Zoom session, and they start suddenly saying nasty or profane or who knows what else they could do. And it's happened. We've had a couple of Fridays for Future Toronto events where they've actually been Zoom bombed, and it was very upsetting for the young women that were involved in that. So, and the other role of the project librarian is making sure that the folder and documents, the people are given proper access to them. So now I'm going to jump into one of our folders, and I'm going to use the last one that we did to see if I can fix this window a little bit. Okay. So in this folder, I have graphics, and I will have, so we have something called an introductory card, which we used in our last event. I'll just show you one. So this is an introductory card. It shows a picture of the speaker, his title, this is actually the event information, but we could just as easily have shown his email ID, a website if you had one. So something to think about. What we did in our webcast was to show this info card with regard to the speaker as the person was being introduced. And then once he was actually, okay, and here is, then we would turn off the stop share. We would stop the sharing. Let me come up here. And there's a banner in here, I think. And so here's some of the posters that we had. And I think this is actually used for the web graphic as well. So it's probably one of the first things you want to look at doing is getting a graphic for your event. And the more speakers that you get lined up, you can advertise that as well. So something to keep in mind. And there's something called the banner, which I can't seem to find right now. Oh, we didn't have one for that event. Okay, so let me come out of here. Videos, same thing. If there's videos in your event, you want to have a copy of it in your folder. And here, so this was provided. This was the program provided by the program sponsor, and they basically give you the real time, the duration of that activity, what the activity was, and usually we'd have another column here, which would be the person responsible for the activity. So what else is it? So that's your regular program here. And so I'm just going to jump into the master schedule. So this is what I would look after producing as the project manager and the Zoom tech lead. And what I'll do is I'll put a tech note beside the rest of the program. And in those tech notes, I'll describe everything that I need to do or other tech team members need to do. It'll also include what the MC might have to do, or the panel moderator, for example. So, but it goes down to every single step that's involved. So if you're turning on the go live for YouTube live stream, if there's a graphic to be shown, a movie to be shown, then that's all part of this. And it describes, Carl here was our MC. So it talks about exactly what Carl needs to do, what I'm doing, what Sharon, who is our wrangler for this webcast, is doing. So that's all detailed. So it's a very thinking through what has to happen in your event, but by making it very clear, everyone knows what everyone else is doing. And in that way, you're going to have less problems during the event itself. And what else can I show you here? Okay, so this is what Mark creates. Mark was our YouTube chat moderator. Maybe Mark, you want to comment on it? Or is it pretty straightforward?
Hi, Ray. Sure. Yeah, this is the document that we create in Google Docs so that it can be shared and worked on simultaneously with anyone. We share it with the moderator for the event that's being hosted. Essentially, my job is to look in the YouTube chat and collect and copy the questions from the chat and put it into this document. So whether they go under the general section or beneath one of the speaker's names, if it's directed to them specifically. That document, as I'm pasting in those questions, usually there's a moderator on the other end who's kind of prioritizing the questions, making sure every speaker has a question, or if there's a ton of them coming in, prioritizing the best ones or grouping together similar types of questions. And that's passed along to the moderator who's asking the questions to the speakers. So it's kind of a two-way document. I take the questions from the chat, put them in here, and then they choose them and ask them in the event live. And then once they've asked them, I just strike through the text to make sure that they know that that question, or questions plural, have already been asked. So that's how that works.
So the other side of it is this particular document. Maybe Mark, you want to do a quick word on that too?
Yeah, so this goes the other way. This comes from the lead up to the event. We ask all of the speakers, panelists, and sponsoring organizations to send in links or actions or social media tags that they want to be shared with the audience to get some extra promotion throughout the event when they're talking about specific things. I usually type up a draft sentence saying, you can learn more about this here, or you can follow them on this page here. And I post those in the chat when the speakers are speaking. So they're usually in chronological order throughout the event. So they're collected before and then pasted in when the speakers are talking.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And let me just quickly see if there's anything else in here. Oh, it's at the very bottom here. So what we call our Zoom speaker checklist. I did mention it earlier. Basically making sure that this is sent out way in advance of the webcast. So the speaker has some idea of what they're expected to be able to do. So, and I think one of the most important things is making sure that they have their full name as their Zoom name so that we can identify them. Because in our live Zoom sessions, they all come into a waiting room. So they're all verified in terms of the proper name before they're passed through into the live Zoom session. And I think that's about it there. Okay. So that was one of our webcast folders. So let me come back out to here. Okay. So that's the librarian role. So after you publish the webcast through Eventbrite, then you get into the actual more meatier portion of the work involved. So you'll be wanting to contact the speakers with regard to their cell phone numbers, making sure you have that available. Continue your publicity and marketing, your advertising. And the project manager, just make sure he's got his team together. They'll also conduct a rehearsal. In the case of people that are very proficient in Zoom, we will just do a technical check-in, but hopefully they can always join. For people that are new to presenting or new to Zoom, I highly recommend doing a rehearsal. And generally the rehearsal will be scheduled probably 2 days, 3 days before the actual event. So that if there's anything to be learned, we have some time to incorporate that. And I'll always make a recording of the rehearsal so that the people that are participating can actually see themselves, how they presented, how they sounded, because sometimes we miss that opportunity. So I talked about the project librarian, continues to be an important person in terms of collecting all the information about the event. If there's things that are expected to be screen shared by the Zoom tech lead, then those graphics, videos, sometimes audios need to be collected. And this is a folder where they're actually stored by that librarian role. Okay. Oh yeah, I was going to show you some graphics. Let's see, find it. Right. So these are some of the graphics that we produced. Actually, not we, which are graphic people that produced. But this is where I wanted to show you some of the different types. So the square ones are generally what we call the web graphics. And they would be posted as an introduction to the event. This one I mentioned earlier, this is a intro card, right? We had an intro card for Carl, who was our MC for our Canada-Africa event. This was another Canada-Africa event. We had Ali Rougeau. She was the MC for that event. This is a sample of a banner. This is for our World Environment Day. So sometimes graphics take time. So if you want to make it part of your Eventbrite registration, so it's important to try to get that underway as soon as you can. So I'll come back to here. How are we doing for time? Not too bad. Okay, so talked about Eventbrite already. YouTube. This is more discussed in the Zoom tech session that I'll be having next week, actually. But setting up the YouTube live stream links, setting up your rehearsal and event Zoom links, and then making sure they're connected.
Ray, do you use the same, when you do the rehearsal, do you use the exact same links that the person will be using for the event itself?
No, you don't want to do that.
Oh.
In fact, what I try to do is I will send the rehearsal, Zoom, and YouTube link if they're interested in advance of the rehearsal. And I'll only send the actual Zoom and Eventbrite links for the actual session after the rehearsal so that they don't get confused.
Mm-hmm.
So.
How far in advance do you send the
questions,
for the speakers?
You can make a note of it because I want to try to make sure I get through all this material within an hour.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Okay, so where am I? Oh, so I mentioned the SurveyMonkey, that you get that done and tested before the actual event, because you want to put that SurveyMonkey link in the chat during your event. We found that if you do it afterwards, your response rate is just not very good. So in the webcast event itself, so a lot is happening in a very short time. A lot of it rests with the Zoom tech lead in preparing everything before the event actually commences. And during the event, the role is actually to make sure that everyone is aware what's going on. So things that are happening in terms of audience counts, sometimes current time, you lose track of time when you're in it. Whether you're off or on schedule, which is why we have the real time in the master schedule, so that you can kind of gauge. And generally, events have been from 1 hour to an hour and a half. An hour and a half is a long time, so we try to keep it on track, on schedule as much as we can. And I put in this, making sure that you watch for trolls. So in a, what I call a closed live Zoom session, where you're really just having your speakers, panelists, presenters in the live Zoom session, along with your MC, your tech team, not so difficult. But in the situation, and I don't really talk about it too much, but where you're having a workshop where you want the participants actually in your live Zoom session, then that's where you have to be more careful. So yeah, that's all. I think that's all I'll say about that. The other thing that the Zoom tech lead does is to conduct a quick debrief immediately after the webcast. So a lot of the time, if there's problems, issues, or suggestions, you can remember it if you start talking about it immediately after the event. So that's the idea, to have that debrief take place right after the event's over. And if there's something that's really important, to make sure that it gets documented and we can use it for future webcasts. So I made a note that this was an important activity. The wrangler, the person that managed the waiting room. And that's why that person will usually insist that you have your full name as your Zoom name. That really is the main way of validating whoever it is coming into the waiting room, because you can't really see their faces. The YouTube chat moderator, Mark's talked about what he does in terms of the questions and the links and that back and forth conversation between the audience and speakers. And we have another person that we designate as a YouTube watcher. And this is just somebody that is watching the actual YouTube live stream. Because when you're in the session itself, the Zoom session, you see live stream, you see things a different way. That's why it's important to have somebody at the YouTube end just watching. Is the sound okay? Is the video okay? Is there blackouts taking place? Sometimes you'll see in a Zoom session, you'll see blackouts because they're actually trying to do something within the session. So generally what I'll try to do, my live session will be on my laptop, and I'll try to touch that as little as possible. But I'll have a second device that I'll use for chatting with the tech team or chatting with the MC. And I'll use my Zoom chat on that second device. But certainly if I'm running a video, and I've actually experienced it where portions of the video get blacked out because you're trying to do some Zoom option, and it just shows up as a blackout. So, okay. And MC or panel moderator is usually somebody that's looked after by the project sponsor. And a question moderator, likewise, that person would actually act as the intermediary between what the YouTube chat moderator is doing, passing the questions through the Google Share document. The question moderator will review that and just pass specific questions to the MC or the panel moderator. So it's a situation where if you expect the questions are going to be fast and furious, more complex, you probably want to have that type of person involved. And the other person that we asked the project sponsor to look after is having a timekeeper. If you set the expectations, we have some town halls coming up with politicians involved. So they're being very clear that you have 3 minutes for your fixed questions. You have 2 minutes for any audience questions. But you as the project sponsor need to have a process for telling the speaker, okay, you've only got 30 seconds left before your time is up. So that, I think that's a very important role. Otherwise, your whole schedule is going to be off. So, and the minutes do add up, right? Okay. So that takes us through this document. Let's see what else I had to go through here. Right. I'm just going to show this. So this is something I was working on. Up a little bit. So if you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm using what's called portion of screen option in the screen share. Oops, close there. Okay. This is a pictorial describing what I just talked about. So the tech team has project librarian, tech lead, and a watcher. The project librarian looks after all of the documents in the project folder, and they receive graphics, screen shares through the program sponsor. They actually may get material from the speakers, from the MC as well. The program sponsor looks after the outreach to get an MC, get the speakers. They'll also look after the Eventbrite registration, and they'll do outreach to potential audience participants. So the participants register through Eventbrite. They provide the questions that go into the shared Google Doc that's managed by the YouTube chat moderator. And the links come from the speakers, presenters, and panelists into the same type of shared Google Doc process. The live Zoom session is displayed through the YouTube live stream to the audience. I should have had an arrow going up to the audience, I suppose. But this kind of gives you some idea pictorially what it is that we're doing. And I think, yeah, the one thing I didn't mention in my paper is that there is a post-event process you go through with the YouTube recording. YouTube allows you to do edits. You can actually trim the ends of your video, and you can also do cutouts. You can take pieces of the YouTube recording out of the video. The nice thing about YouTube videos, if you follow this type of process, is that the same link that people have used to sign on to the to see recording after the event's over. So you don't have to do a resend. They just have to go to the same link. So it makes it very convenient. And I think that's everything I wanted to go through. So actually didn't. It's not that bad. I might be able to finish by 7. So let me stop my share. Okay, so I went through that pretty quickly, and it was kind of one-sided, me talking to you. So you want to fire away? And I'm just wondering, do we need to have a process? Do people want to raise their hand? I have a couple of people that I can't see their videos though. So maybe we can make use of the chat. So either you can put up your hand or just put a star or S in the chat, Zoom chat. Oh, Mark?
Hey, Ray. I just wanted to speak to, Annette had a question from earlier that she wrote in the chat, so I just wanted to to put it to you. So she asked, are we able to adjust audio in from speakers on a panel? For example, what if someone has a really loud mic compared to other speakers? Any adjustments through Zoom or more of a change in mic on their end that's needed? I said that's why rehearsals are so important. So you work it out with the speaker beforehand and make sure that they have the same setup for the live session. But I don't know if you want to say anything more to that.
No, that's probably a good answer. It actually gives us an opportunity to check their lighting if they're going to be in the same place for the actual event. But you can try adjusting it from this end. Like I can adjust, like, do I sound louder right now? No?
Talking.
Talking? Does it sound louder? Yeah.
Sounds the same.
Yeah,
Same?
both of
About the same? Okay, so it's best done at the speaker end.
yeah, I asked because again, I had an experience this week where we had one speaker that, like, you know, people's eardrums were blown because everyone else had a normal like feed in, and whenever the mic that she was using, you know, when she was talking, it was just like you'd have to tear the buds out of your ears, right? And so I didn't know really how to. We tried to address it in the run through session to begin with, and I didn't know how else to cue her to make the change on her end other than just trying to find a different pair of microphones, right? So I was just wondering if you had any experience with that. So I appreciate you sharing that.
So generally during the session, the webcast, myself and the wrangler would be totally muted and our videos would be off screen. But in a case where you're trying to get the speaker's attention and nothing's working, I would turn my audio on and say, please turn your volume down, or say something to that effect. It might be the only way you can do it. So, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Lee, and your hand up?
Oh yeah, I had that question. You said you sent the YouTube live stream link the day before and an hour before an event. And you said that the Eventbrite used Eventbrite to collect the email addresses.
Yes.
Do you send the reminders through Eventbrite, or do you do that yourself through your like MailChimp or something?
I think we send our reminders through Eventbrite, but we'll actually download the email list from Eventbrite. It's faster to do it that way. The one thing about doing it through Eventbrite is it tracks the emails that you've sent out. So that's sometimes an advantage. Okay.
And if you if you download, because I've heard that if you don't download your list before the event is over, then you will lose it because we have a free account, so nothing gets saved.
I think as a precaution, it's a good idea.
Yeah. So if you download it one day and then there's 3 more signups, do you just download the whole list the next day? Or I guess?
You can do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? Did it make sense? Did people follow it? Yes, no, maybe so.
Whose job is that to download the list?
It would be the program sponsor. Whoever your
Program sponsor. Program sponsor is also the moderator usually too, though.
Yeah. No, we
Like that would be a very, speaking as someone who's been in that situation, that's a very easy thing to forget in the midst of a conversation with people.
That's why I always recommend write everything down that you need to do. You don't want to miss one thing. Like if I missed turning on the YouTube recording right now, I'd have a big problem, right?
Right.
So those things, if they're that important, write them down, just go through it. Check them off each one.
Could they be delegated to someone like the project manager?
Sure. Yep.
Seems to me that would be more sensible. Somebody who doesn't have their brain on the conversation, but is watching all the other stuff.
Right. Yep. As long as you have it agreed, it's not something that you spring on somebody at the last moment. Oh, by the way.
For sure, totally.
Okay.
So has the project manager agreed to do that?
Well, you would have to make that agreement beforehand.
Yeah,
I
beforehand.
guess Ray's saying we can do it, set it up if we agree on it beforehand.
Right.
Ben, that's over to you, eh? Because you're the moderator, so you're going to have to figure that out.
I'm sure
Hello, Ben. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I was on, my understanding is I was a presenter or moderator, so that there's like a few roles that are kind of layered on top of that. I can do a lot of those roles, but if they could be distributed among the team, so that way, you know, if it all comes on one person, then you prioritize what your role is. Like I'm primarily introducing people. That was my understanding, was introducing and facilitating the conversation, and also getting the back end stuff, so that multiple people can either take those roles or assist where they're needed, so that it's not you know, the whatever's required, the machine keeps moving along, and then the extras are, so if you miss a question or repeat something, that it's not, so just getting an understanding of, making sure the show goes on versus I get a sense like the all-in-one package, the polish, what we're trying to accomplish is I guess secondary to making the event happen.
Yeah, so when I talk about a project manager, that's really the person that's to make sure things happen to make the event a success. So working with the program sponsor, which could be the, how would I say, the lead for your climate change organization, for example, right? But working out who's going to be looking after what in terms of the webcast. And the more people you can bring in and involve, the less work is for each person, right? And you want to develop resiliency so that each person can back up another person. And if something happens, heaven forbid they get sick, right? Okay, what happens then, right? So always have a backup plan. Always have a second person that knows what that other person is doing. So we're actually going through that process right now with our tech team. We're trying to make sure that the members of our tech team are able to do the different roles. So I'm hoping that at one point, in fact, we have done some webcast assignments where members of the tech team are actually going to be taking on the Zoom tech lead role. So I think the more you can do that with your people, spread the work around, make sure that they can back up each other, you're going to have a more resilient webcast team.
Just talking about that is again, second device. So I had the laptop as my primary, and then this is a backup. Again, not everyone on the team has got that capability, but I might be in a position where I might be using this as a primary tool, and the computer as a backup, right? So power outage or internet or Wi-Fi, whatever. So having everyone on the team, at least having a secondary device.
Right. Yeah. So one thing about using a smartphone as a primary device, make sure you put it someplace where it can't move. Okay. And don't walk around with it. People get really dizzy watching that. And here is to always make sure you designate a co-host. I think it was for the Earth Day event, one of our bigger events. My laptop, which was hosting the whole session, actually went down. But because I had designated a co-host, it stayed up and running. I rebooted my computer, came back on, no one noticed a thing, right? Because I had a co-host. You don't have a co-host, your laptop goes down, that's it.
I hope that's in the instruction sheet, right?
It'll be in the Zoom tech session.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I think you've explained why we need to have rehearsals, because all these roles need to be worked out among the whole team, right? I think for a lot, I don't know, but I think many of our event people for the Eco Fair, this might be their first webinar. So they are, I'm sure, completely oblivious to what we asked them to do.
Rehearsal. And get the Zoom speaker checklist out to them too, so they have some understanding what they're going to be expected to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious how many people here are this, for how many people here is this your first webinar in which you're playing some role other than just being a participant or something of that kind? Not that many, most, yeah, all right. Number of you are, most of you maybe even seem to be. It's totally new to me. I have to confess, I'm a little intimidated by all the other stuff that you might have to do in addition to moderating, which is basically about the only thing that I had in mind up to this moment. So it's a question of how many of those things, which feel like different balls to juggle at the same time, people without experience will be able to manage.
Well, if you're involved in the eco-fair end, Elena, who's, I guess, part of our tech team meetings right now, I've given her access to our webcast folders, like all of our previous webcast folders. So all the master schedules, the graphic art that we've produced, that's all available to her. So if you'd like to have access to that or get a sample master schedule to follow, you can certainly ask her about that. Okay. Quinn, did you have any questions? No, you're leading a initiative yourself, right? So, okay. Okay, so it's 6:52. I think I've covered everything I wanted. If there's any questions, you have my email ID. So you certainly, if you have any questions that you can think of later and you say to yourself, well, I wish I'd asked that question, you can always email me. So
great.
So I should mention then that there is a Zoom, what do we call it, Zoom tech workshop on April 5th at 7 o'clock.
On April 5th.
So
October 5th.
You know.
October.
Oh, October, sorry. Okay, October 5th.
What day is that? Do you know?
It's
Monday.
Monday at 7.
Yeah. next
Monday,
week.
and it's at 7?
Yeah. Oh, it is
Thank
next
you.
Monday.
Will we all get a notice about that?
I can send an email to all of you that were invited to this meeting. If there's other people that were invited and I don't know who they are, then no, I can't. Okay. So make a note.
Sorry, I'm not clear. Are you sending a Zoom invite and this will be something similar to this, but next Monday regarding, you know, like all the technical stuff around managing Zoom?
So that's a good question. I can either send an email asking if you're interested, or I guess I could ask you right now, and if people are interested, hold up their hand, then I can do that too.
Is it important to be interested?
So it's more the technical side. Like this was more the organizing the whole thing.
So this side is stuff we need if we're in a panel or organizing a panel. The other is additional tech stuff that's sort of backstage, which we don't necessarily need to know.
We hope
Okay.
that you don't need to know it. We hope
Good.
our tech team has it.
I'm
all
going to
under
hope that.
control.
Great.
Well, wait a second, Paul. Did you get the private message I sent you?
No, what?
Okay, so I need the tech help. So you might too.
Where's the private message? I don't know.
I don't know. I couldn't send it.
Oh, well, I've just clicked chat, so,
So I need the tech help.
okay, there we go.
Anyway, the message was, I took an anthropology course of yours in the early 80s.
Oh.
But I was born in the 90s.
Because I'm going
Okay,
invited
we'll have to talk more about that sometime.
I'm going to email the people that were invited to this meeting and ask if they're interested. Okay, like I said, I don't want to be sending the link out just to everybody, the whole world. So, and if you're interested, you can let me know. And
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I think that's it, unless there's any other questions.
Thank you.
There's no other questions.
very
I want
much,
to
Ray.
thank you, Ray. That was
That
so
was great.
awesome.
Very, very complete and detailed and clear.
Yes, and we have our marching orders. We know
Indeed.
what to do a good presentation.
We sure do.
Yeah, yeah, really excellent. And I gather